Guys, there's too many of them. I think I overheated. You're coming after the Strider.
Hang tight, I'm on my way.
Why can't I move? What do I do? Gun won't fire! This is bad!
Clear them out. Can't have them taking shots at the Strider.
We've got a whole bunch of Dominion incoming.
Where'd they all come from?
We had a little running with them earlier. Might have killed some of their guys.
Guess that didn't sit so well.
That is the noise you make when you play Anthem. Hi everybody, it's Az here from HeelvsBabyface. Now, I can categorically say that Anthem is one of the most frustrating games that I have ever played in my life. There are some really nice elements to it, and there are some ridiculously horrible elements to this game, and there's just some elements that you're just shaking your head thinking, what are you actually trying to do here? But we're going to go through all of that in this video, as well as all the problems that the game has as well. Now, I haven't got to top level or anything like that. This is a first impressions, and it's based off approximately 10 to 15, I'd say, hours played thus far. I've got my character to level 18. I've experienced multiple parts of the story. I've also done the dungeon, and I've done a lot of the free play, which is when you just go out into the world and get on with stuff. And so I think I've got a pretty good idea what Anthem is all meant to be about. It's a shame that BioWare don't. Firstly, I always have to give credit where credit is due. Anthem is a beautiful looking game. It really, really is. The world that they've actually created, this post-apocalyptic world, is staggeringly nice. Well, for a, post-apocalyptic world. In terms of the foliage, in terms of the design of the areas, as regards to the architecture that is around the place, there are some incredible castle areas for you to see, and it is absolutely beautiful. There isn't anywhere, I don't think, that you look around in Anthem and think, everything seems to have a very nice personality to it, and it seems very real, as best we can get. In as much as it feels like a used world, it feels like this world definitely has seen its hardships and all that stuff. And on top of that, the character designs of the javelins look really nice indeed. They move really nice, and the particle effects of all the weaponry is awesome. And the audio, I've got to give the audio some props here as well. I think the actual sounds, well, partly, I think the sounds of the gunfire and the explosions and that kind of stuff is wonderful. There is another part to the audio which is horrendous, which we'll get to in a little bit. So yeah, in terms of aesthetic, Anthem has it all. It really has it all. It has the package to be an absolutely stellar game if they get the gameplay right. And that's where things don't quite gel. Got to continue with the positive elements before we get into the wacky stuff. The combat, for the most part, is very good indeed. And I say for the most part because the combat on its own is very satisfying indeed. Unfortunately, the game seems to fight you at every turn, which can get very frustrating. So I'll explain why. When it comes to the actual gunplay, it's really good. I think there's a pretty decent selection of weapons. I think a few more could be added, to be honest, but it's not, it's not too bad. It seems to be pretty decent enough. And when you get your shoulder mounts and your heavy weapon on your other hand working synergistically together to create combos, you can do some devastating damage, which is awesome. And they are on a relatively low cooldown to get back into the game as well, so you don't feel as if you're waiting for ages to do something pretty cool. And then you have your ultimate, which is building up all the time, and when you get to release your ultimate, I think you go invincible for the period of time that you use it, and if you're on low health or whatever health you're on, it will actually restore your health after you've used your ultimate as well, which is really good, because if you use it in a dire situation, you come out feeling pretty strong, you've weakened the enemy, and you're back to fighting strength. And it does devastating damage to the enemy, unless you hit an enemy shield, in which case it does nothing, which is a bit annoying. So all in all, the actual gunplay, the way that you can move around, run quickly, jump, double jumps highs, flies, all that stuff, it feels very good. You feel as if you can maneuver around the battlefield pretty easily and snipe the enemies that you want until the game starts fighting against you. And I'll go into this now. So you can go to an area that you're meant to engage the enemy, and you suddenly start taking damage, and there's nobody there. Because the enemies don't spawn in for about 10-15 seconds. This doesn't happen all the time, but it happens too regularly for my liking. So you don't know who you've landed next to, who's attacking you, who's got you targeted, and there will be some nasty enemies there. So you are taking heavy damage, and then you just try and get out of there, and it could be too late. Down. And nothing spawned, and then suddenly it spawned in. I'll put an example, or I've already put an example up on the screen. Bit jerky, but yeah, the optimization of the game seems to be horrendous, and it absolutely eats your CPU if you're playing on the PC. So heaven knows what it's going to be like when it comes out on the consoles. And all that. On top of that, the enemies can also vanish. The vanishing enemies are still a thing. I haven't seen it to the degree at all that I saw it on the demo. I've had a relatively vanish-free experience this time round, but a lot of people are still reporting vanishing enemies that you engage. And then enemies that you kill, sometimes they will just stand there. Their bodies will still stand there, so you don't know if they're alive, you don't know if they're dead, you don't know if you need to focus fire on them or what. And then they will eventually vanish. But again, that becomes slightly annoying. And there's also a nice little ice skating bug where enemies just glide around. Instead of walking, running, glide around. And that is really goofy, and stuff like that should have been gone ages ago in testing. Who is testing your game? Because this is bug-ridden, by the way. So suddenly the combat itself, which is very satisfying indeed, suddenly meets the frustrating elements of the actual game itself, and the combat suddenly becomes frustrating. And often there are times you just want to disengage and get the hell out of there and just regroup, or other times you can just be downed by invisible enemies. Oh, as well as enemies that just pop out of nowhere. They just seemingly spawn absolutely anywhere. So you can have enemies spawn literally next to you. And if they're melee enemies, that can be quite catastrophic, and it just doesn't announce when things are coming in. There's no, anything that happens, little graphic or anything like that to show an enemy spawning in. No, it's literally just pop, 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 pop. Was invisible, pop. So you don't know if they were invisible and now they're coming active, or whether or not they're spawning in. And so some fights, especially if you're solo, can get absolutely to hell. And this is the one thing about Anthem. We've heard the cliche that games are better with friends. Hey, Fallout 76 is better with friends. Yeah, probably hanging people is better with friends, but, I wouldn't recommend it. But I would say Anthem isn't necessarily better with friends. It's just better with people. Solo play is so annoying because of the elements of the fighting that I've mentioned and the bugs that I've mentioned. You just seemingly get swarmed for any angle, and you just don't know what's really going on because you don't know what's bugged, what's not bugged. And so, yeah, solo play can be a very, very punishing experience. And when you're playing with a group, that's when I actually found myself giggling and laughing at some of the combat elements. Because in a group, doesn't matter if I know these people or not, we can just, have people focusing on groups, and therefore not everything is focused on you, and you can get on with doing what you want to get on with doing. And so Anthem seems to be really, really hard on people that want to have a solo experience and just want to have a bit of fun out there in the world on their own. Whereas in a group, you're going to probably destroy stuff. Now, I hate to say this, but I'm really struggling now for positive things to say about Anthem. I've got a pad of issues that this game has. So I'm just going to have to get into what I feel now. So free play is the game mode where you can just go out into the world and do nothing. This really amazing looking world where you go out and do nothing. It's soulless, it's empty, it's vacuous, and it just beggars belief. Now, sure, there are enemies scattered around the place that you could just land and engage in combat. And then when you've done that for 5 minutes, you're saying to yourself, why? And then there are world events that they have that pop every now and again. And the world events are so limited. They just seem to be the same things repeated over and over again. Oh, there's a guardian that's gone missing, a javelin that's gone missing. Freelancer, that's what they call them. A freelancer's gone missing. Oh, there's an SOS call. Oh, there's a nest of scorpions. And it just seems to be the same stuff repeated over and over. You can go out into free play and do the world events for a couple of hours. You've done them all. You've probably done them all multiple times. And so the world events become very, very boring very, very quickly indeed. And so you really have to ask yourself, what am I actually doing? Now, there are a couple of little secrets scattered around in as much as there are some runes that are placed about, and if you find them, then they contribute towards something. I've got 9 out of 10 so far. I still need to find one more. And there are treasure chests that are positioned around the place that you really have to kind of like search for to find. And you do get some quests from your hub, which we'll get to soon. Oh boy. Which do promote you going out into free play and finding stuff. But all the time that I was out in the world during free play, I was just shrugging my shoulders, wondering what I was doing. What I'm doing this for. It just felt empty. And when I returned back, and I could be out playing free play for 2 to 3 hours, and when I go back and I see the experience and the items that I've gathered in that period of time, you have to laugh. Because you can do a story mission that takes 15, 20 minutes and get more, much more, almost double the experience, plus relatively the same amount of items. So you're just thinking to yourself, why even do free play? Why even bother? I might as well just continue with the main story, just keep going with the main story missions and not even bother with free play at all. And so you could ask yourself the question, well, what about when you hit top level then? That's when free play might come into effect. But we know what's out there for free play. And it's dull. It's really, really dull. I'm scratching my head saying, BioWare, you must have known this. You must have seen what is in the outside world and gone, well, this is really, really sparse indeed. It's vacant, it's vacuous, it's dull. And that's such a shame because it looks stunning. And continuing with vacuous, empty, dull. Welcome to the hub. The hub is just horrible. Absolutely horrible. Your main hub, which is your character only, where you pick up your quests and stuff like that. It just feels lifeless, even though there are plenty of people about. The ambient noise is so low, you can barely hear it unless you really pump up the volume. And even then, it's very basic. There should be a bustle. There's this one horrible tune which just goes around. It's like one line long and it just goes. That's all it bloody does. There should be music, there should be voices, there should be the clinking of crockery in the cafes, there should be the smacking of gloves, there should be the conversation pieces going on, and it should be audible for people. No, you've just got this really, really empty, vacuous hub. And then there's a group hub, which is in a hangar where players can all group together, and it is literally empty. It is an empty hangar. Nothing. Apart from the NPC shop and the bank and stuff like that. There is nothing there. There isn't even barrels or crates or stuff like that. It is, oh my goodness me. And there's no music, nothing. It's just like, come here and get really bored. So the only time I've been to the hangar is when it forces you to go to the hangar through the story campaign. And then otherwise, I'm just like, no, thanks, not even bothering. So the hubs that they've got are just dreadful. Absolutely dreadful. So let's get on to the story and the characters. The characters, most of them are trash. It's the only way that I can describe them. They are just ridiculous, over-exaggerated parodies of people. And I can't invest any emotion in them whatsoever. And this is the most frustrating thing for me, because BioWare, they have a reputation for amazing storytelling with their Dragon Age games, with the Mass Effect games. We're not going to include Andromeda in that, by the way. And this is just trash characters with horrendous dialogue that feels like it's been written by a 6-year-old. Just awful. Owen is so annoying as your cipher that there was a section where at the beginning of the game, you heard it in the intro, where he gets control of a javelin and he's losing it. And I'm just thinking to myself, I hope you die. To get rid of the character. The characters are just, there's only a couple of characters which I even relatively like. There's Faye. She's okay. She's a little bit crazy because the Anthem's spoken to her for a little period of time. So she's a little bit there, but she's compos mentis. And then there's another character, a botanist character who's got social issues. And she's all right. But like the main characters, oh, jeez, no. And your character, oh, gee, Captain Whitebread, or, whatever. Just so bland. And there were lines like, when evil comes knocking at your door, you don't back down. You knock them back to the hole that they came from. Why is that? Why? It's just terrible dialogue. You have these amazing games. You have these amazing characters with Shepard in Mass Effect and his really well-developed relationships with his crew. And in Dragon Age, where you had the fantastic relationship. And Duncan, who wasn't in Dragon Age Origins for that long. Oh my God, the way that you bonded with Duncan immediately. So well written. And then you've just got these characters saying the most bland, just ridiculous, stupid, I'm a hero kind of lines. And it's just cringeworthy dialogue. And the story itself, I've done quite a few story missions and I couldn't care. I really couldn't care. The Monitor, who's the villain, just comes across as Captain Villain. I know there's a lot of captains in this, but he just comes across as a villain. That's what his name should just be. A.Villain. That's what their name should be. The story hasn't gripped me. It hasn't drawn me in. The characters I don't care about. And so I don't care if they live or die. I have no emotional investment in this storyline. It's just seemingly poor and not what I'd expect from BioWare. Now, I know that they said that they're reining back on the story because of the other elements. But when I've seen the other elements with the open play and the dungeon and stuff, and we'll get to the dungeon in a moment, I'm kind of like, I would have focused on the story if I were you, to be perfectly honest with you. But yeah, so the characters in the story are just infinitely frustrating. Oh, and by the way, when you're in your hub, you always have to go back to this area to talk to the main characters, and you always have to go past this one guy, and every single time you go past him, he goes, "Hey, freelancer, how's the contract going?" Every fucking time. You couldn't even program any different lines for the guy. So, yeah, characters, dreadful. Story, dreadful. And dialogue, laughable. So the strongholds that the game have, which are this game's version of dungeons, when you load into them, and that's one thing that this game, again, has such a problem with, loading screens. Loading screens go on for minutes. And before some smart ass goes, "Oh, we'll put it on your SSD." My SSD's full, and Anthem ain't going on there. All right, so shut up. I've got more important games on there, like Final Fantasy 14 and Elder Scrolls Online and stuff, which take up like 80, 90 gig a pop. I've got much more important things than putting Anthem on my SSD. All right, so you want it to go on my SSD? You buy me an SSD. But if you just got it on your HDD, holy crap. Oh my god. Literal minutes waiting. There are even streams where you can see people playing credits and stuff. And when I was on a loading screen, this is what I was doing, because I've got to get my steps in for the day. When I would go to load somewhere, I'd just get up, start walking around the house, get my steps in for the hour, and I'd come back and I'd sit down and it'd still be waiting. I'd still be waiting for it to come still. Loading screens are a joke, an absolute joke. And I know the world looks great, but holy cow, the optimization of this game is pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. Especially when you see how seamlessly games like Resident Evil run. And that is one big open area as well with their environments. And yeah, I know it's not as intensive, but just the fluidity of it all. Fluidity, and that's on my HDD. But, it's by the bay. So, when you actually get into the dungeons, yeah, they're hard. The dungeons are hard, and you really have to work together with your teammates. If teammates get knocked down, do try your best to get them back up. You really do need that extra firepower. And I did take a long time in the dungeon. We probably took the best part of an hour or so in there. Now, for some people, that may be like, "Oh, it's too long. It's too long." But I thought it was great. I did, however, find them particularly unrewarding to go through all of that really, really tough dungeon and come out with something like 2 blues. And I was like, geez, I can do a story mission for 15, 20 minutes and come out with 2 blues, maybe more. So I didn't exactly come out of the dungeon with much loot and didn't feel particularly rewarded for doing it. But the actual dungeon itself was hard. You felt as if you really had to think and try and make sure that you got your combos off and thought about when to use your ultis, what to use your ultis on. And I like that. And yeah, having everyone else around you, it did give that you did feel like a little bit more united. So the dungeons, I give them a pass. They're all right. They're all right. So let's wrap this up now. Anthem is superficial. On the surface, it's very nice. It looks great. It has some wonderful environments, wonderful vistas, and the art team, the environment team, have done a stellar job. Really have. Beautiful looking world. The combat is pretty good. Once it's allowed to get going, it's very satisfying and very good indeed. But there's nothing to do in the game. The game seems devoid of anything to put time and effort into. It feels dull. It feels boring. It feels lifeless. It doesn't feel as if it was designed for me to have fun. I don't know what they've done. It feels like a half-finished game. The bugs are just the most annoying thing that you can possibly imagine. Solo play is horrible. You feel as if you always have to be with a group of people. And the overall experience is this game, from what I've experienced so far in the 18 levels that I've got to, and the 10, 15 hours I've put in, this game is so average. So average. It's not above average, it's average. I would much rather be playing Apex Legends. I'd much rather be playing Resident Evil 2. I love Resident Evil 2. But essentially, I'd much rather be playing other stuff. And I've been playing this because I really want to test it out. And I really want to get to the top level because I want to see what is really there. And it doesn't feel like there is much. And that is my worry. I think that Anthem is going to turn out to be a game that is devoid of people. To be quite frank, I think it might sell a few copies on Friday when it goes out for its official launch. But from what I can see, I think people are going to get very bored very quickly and move on to other things. And when you do have other things to choose from, plenty. Metro Exodus came out at the same time. Far Cry came out at the same time. Other stuff's coming in March. There are plenty of things to turn the heads. I don't know what BioWare were trying to do with this game, because I don't think they know what they were trying to do with this game. It seems a mess. It's the only way I can describe it. It's a beautiful disaster in as much as it looks beautiful, but this game is a disaster for essentially a game that is worth investing your time and effort in playing for a long period. Unless BioWare can do something to pick this up, unless there's something that they've got up their sleeve that we don't know about, I don't foresee positive things for Anthem going forward. See, I nearly said Apex Legends, because that's all I'm thinking. I'm just thinking in my head, I just want to play Apex Legends. I just want to play Apex Legends. I just want to get off this game. It's not good. So, yeah, disappointing to say the least. But there you go. That's my first impression of Anthem. Problems, all the problems. Problems. Whole page of problems. Hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel. Follow me on social media and Twitch for live streaming. Links, they're in the description box down below. And I'll be back with some more stuff very soon. You take care. Bye for now.